to Soccer Morning on Backheel.com. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. Welcome into Soccer Morning here, brought to you by World Soccer Talk. Big Thursday edition of the program for you. Very happy to be here. You know, you start your day at 10 o'clock. You start your work day at 10 o'clock. You really don't get to complain. Actually, no, that's not true. We do some behind-the-scenes stuff. So maybe I start my work day at 9 o'clock. I don't really get to complain about early mornings and the like. I'm sure some of you get up epically early, especially on the West Coast, to listen to this program. We thank you very much for doing so. Again, an excellent Thursday program for you. A couple of very good guests. Our friend David Cartlidge to talk some Spanish football will join us today. A couple of minutes. And then the return of James Montague. It's been a long time since James Montague was on this program. We may be going back to the summer. Trevor, is that right? Has it been this summer since James Montague has been on this program? If you don't know who James Montague is, you should. He is the author of When Friday Comes and 31-0, which is an excellent book about the minnows of world football. We're going to talk to James about some things happening in Egypt, bad things. Maybe bounce around the region a bit. He's in Belgrade at the moment. Maybe we'll just ask him how the weather is in Belgrade. It's just excellent to have James Montague back on the program. We've got headlines to do, and then after those two excellent guests, remember, phone lines will be open. You can jump in with your topics, whatever is top of mind for you, and we'll have the Twitter feed going all show at Soccer Morning. Hit us up there. Let's do the news and the headlines. Let's start with Grant Wall's report confirming that the 2022 World Cup in Qatar will be a winter tournament. Well, specifically a November-December tournament. I haven't done the research here, but what's the difference in average daily temperature in Qatar, whatever, from July to November? I'm sure there's some difference. I'm sure it's a difference of some import. But here we go. This seems to be a done deal. Grant Wall's sources report that the idea is out there and that the executive committee will approve it, which is why the 2026 World Cup rights in the United States were practically handed to Fox and Telemundo, who also have the rights for 2018 and 2022. Those 2026 rights are a hedge against a lawsuit that may or may not have been filed, probably would have been filed by Fox or Telemundo, even if they get better ratings in November and December, and I'm not sure that they will. There is a time difference. And that question over whether or not FIFA World Cup soccer is going to go up against the NFL or college football and be okay, I don't know if that's exactly the way it is. Again, 8-hour time difference between the United States and Qatar means that you're going to schedule games not in necessarily windows taken up by American football. Champions League matches yesterday, two of them, Schalke falling 2-0 to Real Madrid in Germany. Cristiano Ronaldo, Marcelo, and here's the thing about the Cristiano Ronaldo goal. It's really good to see a guy who's had so much adversity recently, come back around and score goals in the Champions League. It's such a difficult thing to overcome all of that pressure he's under. Okay. Meanwhile, Basel and Porto, the game that I don't know that anybody really watched. I'm sure some people were split screening it a bit. But if you had if you only had one choice, you probably watched Schalke and Real Madrid. Basel and Porto played to a 1-1 draw there in Switzerland. Luis Figo, who's running for FIFA president. Of course, you know that I believe Sepp Blatter's going to win once again. But it's good to see somebody like Luis Figo, with his playing history, the respect that he has, to be running for FIFA president. And Luis Figo has a plan. He says he would consider expanding the World Cup if he was elected president in May. He says he would expand it from 32 to 40 teams, or FIFA could stage two 24-team tournaments simultaneously on two continents, followed by a knockout phase in one nation. That's just kind of crazy. I don't know. Let's put that to the people. Would you like two 24-team tournaments, so group stages, on two different continents with the advancing teams from those groups, then playing the knockout rounds in one place. It's sort of like 2 mini World Cups and then a final knockout stage tournament World Cup. In Figo's manifesto, which was launched on Thursday, the Portugal great also proposes that $1 billion, that's $1 billion of FIFA's $1.5 billion cash reserve be redistributed to the 209 national federations. He wants to take that nest egg that FIFA's built up through the World Cup, through holding the World Cup, and distribute it back. It's like a tax refund. Sort of like we have a, what's the opposite of a deficit? We have so many deficits around here. A budget surplus. Every now and then, if you're lucky enough to live in one of these places where they can get their stuff together on occasion, there's a budget surplus, and some politician tries to engender a bunch of goodwill by saying, we're going to give that back to the people. Here's your $100 or whatever. And everybody gets $100. Seems to be Luis Figo's plan here. Certainly more equitable than the hoarding of favor that Sepp Blatter has done over the years by currying the votes of all of those tiny Caribbean nations, some of the Oceania and Asian Confederation nations, by giving money and favors to certain countries over other countries. Sepp has maintained his power base. Apparently, Luis Figo has no interest in doing that. His quote, any successful organization needs to have good people who are passionate about the game and want to do the best for fans. That'd be nice. Wouldn't that be nice if we had a president who did those things? That'd be lovely. On the docket today, your matches are Europa League matches. We discussed this yesterday. Hard to get excited for the Europa League for me. I know some people do. Hey, it's Thursday afternoon football for Americans. I'm not sure you could really argue with that. What games do we have on tap today, Trevor? What games are you looking forward to? Give me your top 3 right now. We got Wolfsburg and Sporting Lisbon, Sporting. Young Boys in Everton. Liverpool, Besiktas. Anderlecht, Dynamo Moscow. Nice one. Celtic and Inter. Villarreal and Red Bull Salzburg. Or whatever they call that team. They don't call it Red Bull Salzburg, right? Tottenham and Fiorentina. There you go. That's the one that Trevor likes. Tottenham and Fiorentina. Harry Kane on fire. Ajax and Legia Warsaw. There's another one. I can't say that one. I can't say Trabzonspor and Napoli. Sevilla and Gladbach. So there you go. You get some decent games here. Obviously, as we get down to the round of 32 in the Europa League, some of these teams are teams you'll recognize. Speaking of teams you don't recognize and parts of the world you don't recognize, our man James Montague goes to all of those places. He'll join us at 10:30. But first up...
Welcome back.
Oh, that's the wrong button. First up, David Cartlidge will join us to talk some Spanish football. Real Madrid with a big win in the Champions League. Ronaldo gets it back together. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning brought to you by World Soccer Talk.
2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on backheel.com with Jason Davis.
We turn now to Spanish football. Our friend David Cartlidge. You can follow him on Twitter. David, Jaca is his Twitter handle. David, how are you today?
I'm very good, thank you, and I hope everybody listening in as well.
They should be. Plenty of football to talk about, the process to think about. Let's start in the Champions League with the Spanish representation. Obviously, Real Madrid yesterday in Germany to take on Schalke. It was about as easy as you would expect, I suppose. I mean, look, Real Madrid has had some issues recently, and we've had Ronaldo under pressure. But to be honest, they were always going to take care of Schalke the way that they did.
Oh, absolutely, yes. It was just they went out there and they got the job done. It wasn't emphatic. It wasn't poor. It was just a case of getting the job done and keeping the critics at bay for a little while, and they did exactly that.
Speaking specifically of Ronaldo again, I mean, he has the birthday party. He has there's the chanting at Barcelona, which maybe we'll get to why the LFP decides to investigate these things. But he has the chanting at Barcelona. There's a little bit of talk about his form dipping. And really, what? He hadn't scored in 3 matches? Oh, no. How terrible, David. And then he scores in this one. It was a pretty easy goal. Schalke switched off at the moment, but to see Ronaldo get back on the score sheet's got to be good for Real Madrid.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, last week he was finished and he was done as a footballer. It was good for him to get that goal. And I think someone like Ronaldo, obviously, he takes it to heart when he doesn't score. You know, football's his life, and he's a very passionate player in the way he plays, and he's so dedicated to his job. So it was obviously hurting him. So, but he knew that goal would eventually come. Ancelotti, he knew, and his teammates would have knew as well. And all the critics would have knew that he was going to get that goal. So that's why I think they jumped on him more than they would a normal player, because he isn't a normal player after all. And he got his goal. And who knows? Next couple of weeks before he's firing maybe 5-6 goals, and this 3-game blip will be completely forgotten.
Yeah, you know, there's still a point up in the league. Barcelona's been on a rampant run of form recently, and maybe there was some question of whether or not Real Madrid would get caught in the league, and they still could, I suppose, David. But you know, the amount of panic when a big team takes a tiny little blip is never proportional to actually how badly they're playing. I mean, they're not playing badly. It's just maybe a matter of 1 or 2 bad results. And I suppose the loss to Atleti is the biggest issue here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Atleti loss was 1 game, but it almost felt like it was 4 games that they'd lost in a row, because the manner of that defeat was just it was huge. It really was a big win. I think a lot of the criticism that Real Madrid got was just after that game, but to blow it out of proportion to the extent that, like, they're in crisis, as Barcelona were earlier in the season. Like, I left a tweet and I said, Barcelona now the greatest team in the world after Real Madrid's brief spell as the greatest team in the world, who are now the crisis club. And that's how things change. And it's one defeat, even a draw. And it gets blown out of proportion terribly. And it just goes to show how good these teams are and the level that they play at, that one little blip, be it a draw or a loss, gets magnified 100 times.
Absolutely. And you know, look, we've got Real Madrid getting right maybe in the Champions League, and we'll see what happens in the league itself. Barcelona 1 point back. I mentioned Atleti, and I mentioned them beating Real Madrid and emphatically doing so. But they lost to Celta Vigo on the weekend, and that may be it for their title shot in 2015. Do you think, David?
The lines are so fine in the Liga right now that 6 points is just it's a huge gap for anybody to come back from. And I mean, the still, you know, you have to hope that somebody else slips up. And this season, fortunately, I mean, Atleti will look to the fact that teams they have slipped up. I mean, nobody expected Atleti to slip up where they did. Nobody expected the Barcelona to slip when they did, and things like that, and Real Madrid to slip up. And that's how it works. So they're hoping that this is the worst thing, to have to hope for the other team to slip up. It's not in your own hands anymore. And Atleti were last season, they had it in their own hands, and they just knew as long as they kept playing, as long as they stayed competitive, that they'd get the job done and the title will be theirs. But now it's out of their hands, and the other teams have got to mess up for Atleti to come back. So it'll be interesting to see what their focus is. Who knows? They may even put all their attention on the Champions League right now and just hope for the best in the league.
Well, look, Diego and Atleti crashing the party last year was fun while it lasted, but it's it doesn't seem that's going to be the case this season. We'll get back to a Real Madrid or Barcelona winner. The question now is whether or not one of these Spanish clubs can go and win the Champions League. You mentioned Atleti. Obviously, Atleti and Barcelona playing next week in the first leg of their round of 16 matchups. Just briefly, and I'm sure we can talk. We may be able to talk to you ahead of those matches, David. But from what you see here, are those teams lined up well against Manchester City and Bayer Leverkusen, respectively?
Yeah, I think I think the Spanish teams are in a very good position for it, and I think as well. I think Barcelona will maybe feel like now with their blip behind them, they can carry on and they can finish the season extremely strongly. And like we said about Atleti, maybe they feel the league has gone somewhat. So they'll maybe focus that extra bit of attention on the trophy that evaded them last year, which was the Champions League. And then, of course, Real Madrid, who the demands are so high, they have to compete in every competition 110%. So, yeah, I think it's lined up really, really well for the Spanish side. And you could see a bit of dominance when it comes to the semi-finals. Who knows,
You do also have Spanish sides in the Europa League, and I sort of ran through some games today. Obviously, you have Athletic Bilbao in that tournament. Sevilla's in that tournament. Villarreal's in that tournament. You are in Sevilla ahead of that match. Give us a bit of a preview.
Yeah, of course. Yes. Well, Sevilla, they're doing well in La Liga, and they're also doing well in the Europa League as well. And of course, they're the holders. So there's a bit of pressure on them to retain that trophy, and they've not got. We talk about an ideal draw in the Champions League for Atleti and people like that. Well, this isn't the ideal draw for Sevilla at all. They are very concerned about this one. The journalists in the city, and I think the players know how much of a game this will be. Borussia Mönchengladbach, very, very exciting team in Germany. Some fantastic players. Bit of a Spanish touch as well as Alvaro Dominguez there, who used to play for Atleti, and they play in a way that could really, really hurt Seville. The way they are set up, they're very tactically clever. They hit teams on the break. They've got lots of pace. They've got lots of flair, and they could really, really trouble Sevilla. Obviously, Sevilla feel they could do the same to Borussia Mönchengladbach, but there is. I'm quite surprised at the amount of concern from inside Seville about this game.
Elsewhere in La Liga, the other teams in this competition, any of these matchups of major concern, or would you have the Spanish sides as favorites in most of them? Again, Athletic Bilbao has Torino, just Villarreal has Red Bull Salzburg. You wouldn't necessarily think that either one of those would be a major threat, would you?
No, absolutely not. I mean, the only factors are that Villarreal have mounted up a few injuries. They're missing Bruno Soriano, who will be out for, I think it's about 2 or 3 months. He's the captain, their leader. Gabriel Paulista went to Arsenal. So that's 2 key players from the first half of the season when they were so strong that have now gone, and that could hurt them. And the signs are that is hurting them. So that will be interesting. And then Red Bull Salzburg have got the excellent Jonathan Soriano, who just cannot seem to stop scoring in any competition he plays in. So that's a tricky one. And with Athletic Bilbao, I think their own form has been, they're not at the level of last season, as we've discussed on the show before. So that is the factor that could maybe make them slip up. But it's definitely Sevilla, I think, with the trickiest tie out of the 3 teams in the Europa League.
At this point, again, we've just had a new television contract go through, television rights being sold by the Premier League in England. David, I'm sure you know about the riches that the Premier League brings in. And as part of that discussion, there was, again, sort of here's how the breakouts in various leagues are between teams. And the English teams, even at the bottom of the table, even relegation-threatened teams are making as much as clubs like Bayern Munich. So not only is the Premier League rich, but we see the graphic again that shows how much more in the disparity in the TV money between Real Madrid and Barcelona and everybody else in La Liga. And I did read that there was another push to get some legislation through to try to get some equitable split in the TV money. Is there any movement on that whatsoever? Or is that once again going to stall?
There's definitely been a lot more movement than there ever has been, and there is a new deal going to be coming through. But people, I mean, Espanyol's president Colette, he's speaking out strongly against it, and he's urging the other clubs not to agree to this. And there's only a few teams not really wanting to play ball, and they say we want more. And I completely understand it, because I don't know, some people, the people like Tebas, who's the Liga chief, he's saying, look, this is a good deal. Look, we're finally changing things, but it is not really that much change. It's just a little bit of change. It's not going to make any difference. I'm in the camp there. I think that I'm a bit of a pessimist here. I think the damage has already been done to Spanish football in terms of this TV contract. It's gone on for too long. So, I mean, there will be a change coming in, I think. I think everybody's going to end up agreeing to it. But for me, it will not make a tiny amount of difference, I don't think.
And so what are we talking about then? I mean, again, we could go into the future and wonder about a European Super League again, David. We can certainly talk about whether or not an entrenched entrenched Real Madrid, Barcelona, with all of the advantage that they've always had, will just continue to dominate the league, and no one's ever going to really make a dent. I mean, and that Letty can pop up every now and then, but are we just going to, status quo, just going to hold on? I mean, even if there's a new deal and there's some sharing of revenue, you just expect this to go on as it's always gone on?
Oh, yeah, definitely. 100%. Everything has come too late. So I think for figure one is the fact that it's come too late. And B is it isn't enough. The changes that they are willing to make, it isn't enough. The money that, say, Valencia and LA you're going to get extra isn't going to be enough. It isn't going to close any gap any further. It might make things a little bit easier in terms of they might be able to offer a player a little bit extra more money for his new contract. If Athletic need to offer Munain a new contract, they can offer him a little bit extra money. Okay, but in the long run, it isn't going to make any difference. It isn't going to mean that Atleti are going to be at the top of the market competing for James Rodriguez when he came available. It wouldn't change anything like that. So no, I really, really don't see any changes. It needs to be a radical change before anything occurs, and it's nowhere near that.
So you don't ever foresee the possibility of Spain adjusting to the point where they can get closer to what England. I mean, that's obviously the extreme. I mean, you look at, again, Swansea's getting 35 million euros out of their contract, out of their TV deals, out of their TV appearances, and meanwhile, Eibar and Rayo Vallecano and all of these clubs are getting a fraction of that. You don't ever see them getting close.
No, definitely not. I think Athletic will maybe get the odd transfer through. They're like, oh, that's a great deal, and they'll spend a little bit of money, but I don't think they'll get that close. And as for the other teams, the Rayos and the Aibars and the Deportivo La Coruñas, my God, they will never be anywhere near, unless they'd have to, like I say, it'd have to be a radical change to balance it all out across the board, but there is no indication that they will ever do that, because the people who are running Spanish football want Real Madrid and Barcelona to compete in Europe with the big teams like BeIN, with Chelsea, Man City, the people with lots of money. So they're going to keep giving vast sums of money to Barcelona and Real Madrid so they can compete there. And everybody else, they don't care about.
Well, and they are sort of propped up by the fact that Spanish football has done such a wonderful period of success, and there's so much talent there, and the academies are churning out players that you can have an Atleti going to the final against Real Madrid, and that makes Spanish football look good, while there is still all of that discrepancy in the way that the money is divvied out.
No, absolutely. The Spanish football on the surface looks wonderful. It looks the greatest thing in the world. You got lovely sunny weather shining down on the stadiums and some wonderful players coming. You got Suarez coming. Who knows who will come next? Royos, Hummels, somebody like that. Another top world star will come, and everything looks good. Spain might get a new batch of talent through and dominate again, and it looks good. But at the end of the day, there's no money for 18 other clubs in the league. The stadiums are empty. The ticket prices are outrageous. The organisation from week to week in terms of organising the fixtures is terrible. Kickoff times are out of hand. Fans are becoming more disassociated with the game itself. And it's in a terrible, terrible state. But again, on the outset, it looks very, very good. But it isn't. That isn't the picture.
Is there a chance that the new TV sharing, whatever it is, whatever little bit it does give to some of these other clubs, will at least help some of those clubs either stay out of the level of debt that they've taken on, or at least guarantee some solvency for the future? I mean, that would be the bottom, the minimum needed. Just make sure that these clubs are able to continue to operate, that they're not going to be saddled with debt for the next 25 years.
No, absolutely, because there's too many historical Spanish clubs that have gone to the wall because they couldn't survive, so they don't even exist anymore. Teams don't even exist. So yes, it will help teams pay their wages and their costs, to pay the tea lady, the groundsman, things like that, and that's of course that's important. So it will help them do that. Where any more than that, no. But yeah, of course, it's nice that they're getting a bit of extra money. Okay, they're not going to turn down a little bit of extra money,
Sure.
So that will be nice. And of course, there's responsibility for them as well. They need to run their own clubs properly.
Yes.
It isn't just a TV deal that has caused a problem in Spain. There's some bad chairmen, there's bad owners, and they've lived beyond their means basically. So there needs to be a bit of austerity, and a bit of sense from owners and chairmen as well. The blame isn't completely on the TV deal.
All right, David, explain to me why. And look, I'm not inside of Spanish football. I know there have been issues in Spanish football, and you nip things in the bud. But explain to me why it's worth investigation and potentially punishment for Barcelona that their fans were chanting "Ronaldo is a drunk" or "Cristiano is a drunk."
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. It's ever since the incident with Leti and the Depor fans when the Depor fan, when he died, people remember that, and during that game. After that, there has been an escalation of security within stadiums, outside of them, and but typically with Spain, things haven't gone to plan. It hasn't worked out quite right because, again, the fans are becoming more outcasted from stadiums. You were entering a stadium with a particular scarf with the name of the ultra group on. So say if you were an 18-year-old kid and you just want to have the scarf of these ultras, you look up at them and you see them as loud fans and you think, great. They are getting scarves removed, and they are getting made to stand outside of stadiums and getting searched. And it's becoming crazy like that in terms of for the fans. And then with the chants as well, everybody knows what sort of chants goes on at games. I mean, we're not talking racist chants here or anything like that. We're just talking insults. Like people saying F another team, and that is getting the teams into trouble and the fans into trouble as well. So it's getting a little bit out of hand. They're missing the actual point. I mean, you can't cut down every chant. If somebody's going to chant that about Cristiano, okay, it's not very nice. I think we know about his father with his problem with alcoholism and things like that. So it's not nice, but I don't think anybody needs to be punished for it. This happens. This is fan culture. You can't change that. That won't change.
Very interesting. David Cartlidge joining us, talking La Liga. Follow him on Twitter, David, Jaca. David, appreciate your time and your insight as always. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Nice as always.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, James Montague will join us. We'll talk a little Egyptian turmoil again, some trouble there. Middle Eastern soccer, Asian soccer, whatever else is on James's mind. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, brought to you by World Soccer Talk.
I turn my camera on. I cut my fingers on.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on backheel.com with Jason Davis.
Here we go, back on Soccer Morning, brought to you by World Soccer Talk. Very happy to have on the phone line from Belgrade, James Montague, author of When Friday Comes and 31-0, both books you should absolutely pick up. Wonderful football books about maybe places you don't read about very often. James, how are you, sir?
How are you doing? And it's lovely to be back. Where have you been all this time? I haven't heard from you for a while. I feel like a jilted ex-girlfriend.
I think you've been very busy. You are a globe-trotting reporter, writer extraordinaire, and I don't know. Life has been in the way. But we're back together. It's here. The reunion is happening. Back. James,
tighter than ever.
Yes, absolutely. The original thought about having you on was to talk about Egypt. We're going to talk some other things, but with the Port Said incident, obviously the Arab Spring and everything, the Egyptian revolution and everything that's gone on in that part of the world over the last couple of years, I don't know that anybody thought that things were going to be okay or that football would never be touched again by that violence. But we just had another instance of police clashing with supporters and people dying. Yeah. And I just give me your thoughts on the collision of football and politics and the turmoil that Egypt is continuing to go through.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people would have seen the news, and it was rolling a lot on CNN, and even the numbers of people that were killed are quite confusing. At first they said it was 19, then 20, then 22 people. Ultras White Knights, which are the ultra groups of Zamalek, which for those people who might not know a lot about Egyptian football, the two biggest teams in Egypt are Al Ahly and Zamalek, and they're the two teams in Cairo, and there's a big rivalry between the two. And during the revolution, both sets of fans had ultras groups. So I'd met in 2007 when there were very much fan groups under Mubarak. President Mubarak, former president, was deposed in the January 25th revolution. And these guys, started off ultra groups based on, like Italian or British or English kind of football kind of crews. And they were very much about football and supporting. It was very much about, for Ali fans and for Zamalek fans, it was the hatred of the other team in Cairo. But what's fascinating is that when I saw them in 2007, it was very much about football. And within a few years, it turned into something very political because, every match these guys were dealing with the police. And I'd been into the post-episode pre-revolutionary Egypt. And the police were, they're out of control. It was a police state. You'd go to a match. I mean, I've had a couple of batons over my shoulders from police, just demanding IDs, acting with absolute impunity. And what happened is that these fans then started really fighting the police rather than each other. And it became something very anti-authoritarian. It became something very anti-police and then by extension anti-regime. And suddenly you had tens of thousands of young men singing songs against the police, songs against the regime, and the football stadiums really became an area of public space that was uncontrollable. And in Egypt and in much of the Middle East, there are only really two spaces in authoritarian countries where you can get large groups of people that can express ideas and really curse and cuss what's going on. And that's in the mosque and that's on the football terraces. So these guys really, they did play a kind of fundamental role, I think, in the revolution itself. They're talked about as guardians and gatekeepers and protectors of the revolution. And after the revolution, these guys were revered. They were really exalted in polite society as well as, amongst themselves and amongst other ultras around the world. But as the revolutionary kind of aims have suddenly started to disintegrate and pull away, you've had the demonization of the ultras. And then you obviously had Port Said on February the 1st in 2012, where 72 fans, Al Ahly fans, were killed. And I'm friends with a lot of these guys. I've gone and seen them in Egypt, and I was there afterwards as well, spending time with them. And there is no doubt in their mind that the reason for that tragedy was one of revenge, one of the regime punishing the ultras and the police punishing the ultras for their role in the revolution. And now there's been a long court case about that, and there's been a long, people have been sentenced to death, and I was there in 2013 with the ultras when there was 15,000 waiting for this, the sentences to be announced from the court case. And it was mainly Al-Masri fans that were found guilty, but also the police, the man who was head of security at Port Said. And there was just too many things to say that this was just fan violence. I mean, even Bob Bradley, who spent a lot of time there with the Egyptian national team, and I spent a lot of time with him as well. He was very skeptical. He read a lot. He was very skeptical of what the authorities were saying about this. So there's always been a hint that there's been some, there's always conspiracy theories in Egypt, but that there is something deeper to this than fan violence. And really, as you had President Morsi, who's deposed essentially, President Sisi coming in, the military regaining its control. It's also about regaining control of the ultras, who's kind of this out of control element of civil society. And, and then really, you've got now the president of the Zamalek, who he's a Sisi supporter, and for months been calling, the ultras white knights, terrorists and Muslim Brotherhood sympathizers, and trying basically anybody who protests or has any problem with the regime to be lumped into this group of kind of awkward squad of people who kind of want to bring down the regime. So when this happened last week, when let's say 22 people were killed, straight away the same things happened as it did in Hillsborough as well, by the way, which was blaming the fans, right, blaming ticketless fans as they tried to get into the ground. And you go on YouTube and straight away you see that those fans have been penned into a barbed wire cage essentially, and the police are firing tear gas into it. I mean, it's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace that anybody in the Egyptian authorities can suggest with this footage that this was something to do with the fans. This is something to do, whether it's conspiracy or not, it's too early to say. I don't know. But what I do know is that there was such a lack of regard for people's safety and for their lives and for what would happen if you did that, it's essentially a death sentence as soon as you throw a gas canister. And I've been tear gas plenty of time. I can tell you, it was not a pleasant experience. Yeah. And if you put it where you've got so many people crammed into a space, then, it's essentially murder. And it's a disgrace what's happened. And it's a disgrace what really is happening with the club as well. I mean, Zamalek, lots of people have been saying how sad they are and that, these guys are martyrs or whatever. But then you've got, Omar Gabba, one of the players, who refused to play when he heard what was going on. And rather than saying that this guy was a hero or saying, we understand, much like many of the players at Al Ahly, refused to play, like Mohamed Abu Treka, until there'd been some kind of justice for their fans. Right. The alternative is that the president of Zamalek, wants this guy fired. He's suspended him. He's done something wrong. Whereas, I think any other club in world football would understand that what he did was absolutely correct. So it's really, when you look at what's happening there, the revolution is getting further and further away from its original ideals, and the ultras, I think, are paying the price for being, I guess, so successful in what it is that they kind of accidentally stumbled across in the first place.
It's one of those things. It's troubling as someone who lives in the United States, where I have the privilege of being able to watch my sports and watch my soccer, my football, without having to worry about whether it's ever going to be politicized. It's just never going to happen. It's never going to be an issue for me. And in this case, you mentioned Abu Treka, who I believe was being pulled between various factions back, after Port Said, and refused to sort of align himself. And look, you can't separate unfortunately, you can't separate the football from the politics. Is Egypt ever going to be able to do something like that? And in that part of the world in general, and we'll get to Palestine and their national team in a bit here. Is there ever going to be a chance to separate the politics from the football, or is they just going to be inextricably linked forever?
Well, I mean, I think that what happens in an authoritarian regime, it creates these, people want freedom of expression and people want to be able to organize and to be able to feel that their voice is being heard. And what happened in Egypt is very unusual. I don't think we've ever seen anything where fans have played such an integral role in the revolution. So if you basically stymie and stifle public space, it comes out somewhere like weeds in the crack of a pavement. And this is what's happened here. It just happened to be football. It could have been in another set of circumstances. It could have been musicians or artists or some other kind of form of public space, but it wasn't. In this case, it was football. And so it's not that we should decouple football from politics. I think it's very important. And why not? Why not? Yeah. I mean, it's such a huge social area of our lives that touches so many people. Why not be political? It's not an issue of decoupling the politics from the supporters. It's about stopping essentially a counter-revolutionary movement from destroying the fans that have made the game so special in Egypt. And it's still one of the best places in the world. I lie. It's the best place in the world I've ever gone to watch a football match. Yeah. I've never met more passionate, intelligent, just spot on people in my life that have done Egyptian football matches. It's absolutely brilliant. And, you know, really in the aftermath, and I was there in 2011 after the revolution in Tahrir Square, and I felt that optimism that they were involved in, and the optimism of doing something correctly and doing something right. And I think everybody should be very proud, not just Egyptian fans, not just football fans, but anybody that's interested in freedom of democracy should be very proud of what they did. And it's so sad to see the clawback from the state and these young men, you know, who are dying now in their hundreds. And you've got to remember, it's not just football fans. I mean, there's been thousands, hundreds, if not thousands of people shot and killed at protests for being activists, for being pro-Morsi or members of the Muslim Brotherhood or even Muslim Brotherhood supporters. And so they are just one part of the revolutionary makeup, you know, that was useful in overthrowing Mubarak and now gradually being clawed back by the army and Sisi. And it's just you know, it's horrible to see. And I mean, like, even as a journalist, I mean, I've traveled back and forth to Egypt many times, and I'm not sure whether to go back this time. I'm thinking I'm going to go back, but when you see what happened to the Al Jazeera journalists, it's very easy for them to be, you know, to be put into prison and told that they were traitors and all this. You know, the country I left is not the country that I would go back to, and you know, so it's just a real shame. You know, they're talking about the football being kind of returning next week, because a lot of the clubs will go to the wall if they don't restart football. They've had 2 seasons cancelled out of the past 3, I think it is. And but the fans won't be allowed. They've only just been allowed back in anyway. And if, you know, I think the regime knows if they keep the stadiums empty for long enough, then it's a way of killing, you know, this area of society that they can't control and they're fearful of.
Yeah, you know, I certainly don't want to make a distinction between the lives lost at a football match and any other lives lost. It's a tragedy either way.
Yeah, you know, of course. But we talk, this is a very unique thing. This is our world, and to see nobody should ever go to a football match and not come back.
Sure,
you know,
absolutely.
It should never ever be that. So you can only really change or talk about the things that are in front of us, and for us, that's football. And for me, I'm incredibly proud to say that I've met a lot of the guys who really, played a really important role in something that really was important. And it's just a tragedy to see what's going on there at the moment. Really, it's a tragedy.
You want the game to be a source of hope and a release maybe from some of those other concerns, but at the same time, you're right. If this is the option, if this is the outlet that they can use to affect the change or to make their voices heard, if that's one of the only places they can do that, then they absolutely should. I'm going to turn us away from Egypt, James, while I have you here, because you've also written and followed the story of the Palestine national team. And this is, I don't know if this is the opposite end of the spectrum per se, but it certainly is, an element of hope, an element of identity for Palestine to have a national team that goes and represents an area of the world that is not recognized as a sovereign nation by most places, by most other countries. FIFA does recognize their right to be a national team representing the area. So what does the Palestine national team mean to that region?
Well, I mean, it's incredibly important. I mean, it's not often that you'll hear many people praising Sepp Blatter, but Sepp Blatter was at the controls when, in 1998, Palestine was first recognized. He landed along with Jerome Champagne, was a prospective candidate for the presidency, but didn't get the required nominations, but landed with him at the Rafah airstrip and was greeted as hero, which kind of explains, I think, some of his popularity in Africa and the Middle East, which we, mainly in Europe and America, that we don't necessarily see. But when Palestine was recognized, it was a huge issue because so few international bodies recognize an entity called Palestine. And so them going and playing international fixtures where they have a flag, an anthem, they have the word, even having the word Palestine and not occupied territories or the Palestinian territories, but the word Palestine itself is a huge psychological issue, and it's taken very, very seriously within the West Bank and within Gaza. And you can tell that by looking at the kind of people that are involved in the organisation of football. And at the top, you have Jibril Rajoub, who's the head of the FA, who is one of the highest ranked members of Fatah, which is the kind of the secular nationalist Palestinian group faction of Yasser Arafat. And so these are heavyweight political guys. This guy was the West Bank security advisor to Arafat. Known for being the kind of guy that to bash heads together. He's kind of fearsome character, and he's involved not just with the football, but also with the Olympic Committee, So they see, and I spoke to Salman Fayyad, a former prime minister, who said, this is important. This is important in the building of a nation to have these kind of elements put on the international stage. And recently I was in Kosovo, and the Kosovo deputy foreign minister told me the same thing when the IOC recognised them recently. This is almost as important as being recognised by the UN, because more people will see it. There's a greater visibility to see membership than, say, the dry political membership of the UN. So, or maybe not the UN, but certainly other international political bodies. So it's incredibly important. So when they qualified for the Asia Cup, which just took place in Australia in January, it was the biggest event in Palestinian football. And you've got to remember that when I first went there in 2006, and I went to the West Bank, and there was huge movement restrictions from the Israelis that made league play almost impossible. So there's a cup game. I remember going to the Jericho International Stadium, which was basically rubble, and the referee turns up, I think, half an hour late because, he got caught at a checkpoint. And so you couldn't ever organise a league because the checkpoints made that impossible. So it was just this haphazard amateur league. And then since getting recognition and since building on that and getting funds in, they've organised a professional league. So they have a fully professional league where they pay wages comparable with the Israelis, which is incredible. And then they have the World Cup qualification campaigns. They qualified for the Asia Cup. They have a women's league. They have a women's national team that, in many cases get more fans turning up than you get to watch the England women's national team turn up. So there's been some incredible developments, and, not much has moved politically or economically for the Palestinians in the past 10 years, but this is one area they could be rightly proud of. And that's why it seems so important, not just for Palestinians, but for Arabs around the world, that the national football team really is a symbol for hope. It's a shame they didn't do any better. I think they had a good chance against Jordan, but they, for some reason, fired their coach, James Montague, before the game, and before the tournament, and he had the team set up in a very good way. They had a couple of great results. They'd won the Challenge Cup to get there, and replaced him with a kind of technical director of the FA who had no real experience in this area. And you can see the team was disjointed. The team looked unhappy. And they had a good chance getting out of that group, and in the end, they ended up losing all three games. But they did score, and that was, at least one thing.
Well, sometimes, and you've written a book on minnows, so you know how this goes, James. Sometimes just being there, just representing your people on the international stage in the world's most popular sport is the victory. But at the same time, if you think you can advance, if you hope you actually have a chance, then maybe there's some disappointment as well. Did they underachieve?
I think so. I mean, I think a lot of, and you should follow, I think, Football Palestine on Twitter. The account is a really great guy who writes a really great Twitter account and blog on Palestinian football. And he's very disappointed, very angry with the Palestinian FA, very angry with Jibril Ajoub. They made mistakes, and that they thought it was good enough to be there when actually they had a chance to get out of a group. I mean, Jordan is, has a majority, and it's something that's not really talked about in Jordan, but has a majority in the Palestinian population, due to all the kind of movements of people over the past few years. So they know each other intimately. They played their first ever home international game in the West Bank against Jordan. They know that team. A lot of their players play for Wasat, which is the Palestinian team in the Jordanian league. They know each other intimately, and they had Ray Wilkins, former England international, who's their coach, who really, I don't think he'd won a game at that point. He had a terrible record, and you had a Palestinian team that had qualified, had beaten teams around it. I think they drew with China. They had some, there was some real hope and optimism, some really good players coming through. And then you have, Omar Jaroun, for instance, and it's so shaky at the back. And you had a player like Omar Jaroun, who I'm sure your readers have read about in the past, from Peachtree, Georgia. Grew up in Georgia. I think he plays for the Ottawa Whitecaps. No, it's Vancouver Whitecaps. There's a team in Ottawa. I can't remember anyway. They're in the second division somewhere. But a team in Ottawa that he's playing for. But I've seen him play, and he's a real solid centre back. I saw him play during their World Cup qualification campaign. Him and Al Badari at the back would have been fantastic. Maybe not the quickest, but they would have been great. And for some reason, he was cut from the squad. Apparently because he couldn't make one warm-up game. And you just think mistakes like that, they really did have a chance, I think, against a poor Jordan side, probably an Iraq side, that really only came into itself later on in the tournament. And obviously Japan, they're the Asian champions, so they weren't expected to win that anyway. But 4 points from those three games would have been enough. So I think, a lot of Palestinians were quite disappointed, and actually should have taken it further than just saying we are there. And it was important, and it was a huge thing to have a Palestinian flag there and to have the name Palestine there. But equally, they would have, I can't imagine that they'll ever have a better chance to progress in an international competition than they had then.
Yeah. Tough go of it for Palestine, but I'm sure they'll be pushing forward. James Montague, currently in Belgrade. Follow him on Twitter. It's James, Piotr, James Peter. Thank you for your time, and thanks for the return to the show, James. Hopefully we can track you down in the near future.
Yeah, don't leave it too long next time, yeah?
We won't. We definitely won't. Make sure you go and pick up James's books when Friday comes. Certainly 31-0, which I have a copy of and enjoy very much. Thank you for the time, James. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll open up the phone lines, 347-756-6276, and hit us with tweets as well, at Soccer Morning. Be right back.
Run away, but hold her down with soggy clothes and breeze blocks. Cetirizine, your fever scream me again. Never kisses, or do you ever send a full stop?
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on backheel.com with Jason Davis.
Here we go. It's the open phone line segment of the program, 347-756-6276. And I have a call on the line, Shane from up in Connecticut. I think he wants to talk Spurs. Or you want to talk Spurs and where they usually finish, Shane? Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah. So I'm on live, correct?
Yes, you are. What's up?
All right, great. Sorry about that. That doesn't make good radio. But, Jason, so, I'm president of New Haven Spurs, but I have these Twitter conversations or arguments with fellow Spurs about the concept of how we're going to get into the Champions League. And the two of the best probabilities, because obviously we're not going to win the league. We're not going to finish second. We're not, we'd like to finish third, but money talks with the English league. So that's not quite the possibility. So our highest probability of getting to the Champions League is one of two methods. One, finish fourth. That's still a qualification place. So we still do need to play home and away to actually get into the Champions League, or finish fifth or sixth or seventh, but concentrate on the Europa League, win the Europa League, and gain, I'm pretty sure, automatic qualification without the qualification. It's automatic qualification into the next year's Champions League. And so the debate that I think happens in some circles, but I can't understand it, is the idea where, which would you rather do? Would you rather finish fourth and have to qualify, but you finish fourth? Fourth is not a trophy. It doesn't win anything. It's just simply arbitrary number that UEFA puts onto the English league through the qualification process. Top four going to Champions League. Good. or win a cup, a European Cup, and automatically qualify for the Champions League, regardless of where we finish. But most likely, 5th or 6th.
Shane, I think that normally, for most teams, for most clubs, for most fans, you get the trophy. You want to go get the trophy. You want something to put in your case to show off. I don't care if it's Europa League, Cup Winners' Cup, Intertoto Cup, whatever whatever Nottingham Forest was winning back. It doesn't matter. You want that trophy. Now,
I agree.
But you are a Spurs fan. This is Spurs we're talking about. And
all right.
More than likely in this particular season, if you finish 4th, that means you're ahead of Arsenal. And I would think that for Spurs fans, the symbolic element of finishing ahead of Arsenal may even be worth more than a trophy. So, and you don't necessarily have to focus on 2 different fronts in order to do that. Because, look, you're going to want to get as many points as you can in the league regardless. You're also going to go for the Europa League trophy. That means fighting on both fronts with everything you've got. You're focusing on one area. If you're not necessarily it's not that you don't want to win the Europa League, but maybe you're not putting as much into it as you would otherwise.
Correct. I think winning breeds winning.
This is true.
Being able to, we don't want to focus on one thing. If you want to be a Champions League team and finish 4th every year and forget about the European Cup, you're still. What are you building towards? Finishing 4th doesn't build your team and your players to understand what it's like to play a midweek European.
But Shane, it's the Champions League, and we know the Champions League is orders of magnitude bigger, more important, and richer than anything the Europa League will bring you.
Oh, correct. But if we win it, then we get automatic.
No, I realize that. What I'm saying is, okay. What I'm saying, you're dealing with knockout football, which is the margin for error is much smaller in knockout football than it's going to be to go win 4th in the Premier League. I mean, I know. Look, I know it's very tight up there, and I know. Look, you got Arsenal, and you got City, and you got United, and you got whoever else is going to climb up there. Liverpool doesn't look like they're in for it this year, but if you're going to be taking that next step, I'm actually only playing devil's advocate. I think Europa League's the way to go.
Yeah, for sure. I feel the same way. I don't understand why anyone say next year, hypothetically, UEFA goes, all right, the English teams do really well in this competition. Let's up it to 6 places.
Well, that's not going to happen.
6 places.
That's not going to happen.
So, yeah, of course not. This is hypothetical. But what I'm saying is 4th is arbitrary, just the same as
You've got a good point. Thanks for the phone call, Shane. I appreciate it, man. You got
Great.
one more point. I'll let you finish. You got one more point?
No, that was pretty much it. I want to win a trophy. I don't care if it's UEFA Cup or not.
I think that's the best way to go. Thanks for the call, man. I appreciate it. Let's see.
All right. Thanks, Jason. Bye.
Who do we have on the line with me now?
This is Michael from Orlando.
Hey, what's going on, Michael?
Hey, I want to talk a couple things about like CBA and I guess specifically in Orlando. I know like if the players strike, everyone stands to lose, but wouldn't you think by far like Orlando City right now stands to lose probably the most?
Out of the MLS clubs? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've passed now 45,000 tickets and coming up on 50 probably by the weekend.
No, I've been told that a lot of that is that those tickets have been handed out, that they're papering the room. Is that true? Do you believe that, or are they actually sold tickets?
Well, I work for a local soccer store, and we bought like 1,000 tickets to do a promo to help sell the stadium. So I know, for example, like those tickets would be considered sold.
Sure.
And as long as we sell ours that we did through this deal, eventually those will be considered sold out. So that's true. I mean, some of them have already been sort of like claimed for different events. Like they've got some event where, if you go to this party, you'll get a ticket. Yeah,
well, so the issue, Michael, is whether or not those people actually show up. I mean, you hope they do. But I'm not trying to take anything away from Orlando. And you're absolutely right. Thanks for the call, man. You're absolutely right. Orlando City Soccer Club stands to lose the most in terms of buzz and momentum if there is a strike. Bill in Rockland County, what's going on?
Jason, how's it going? I've been trying to call since Friday, so I have a bunch of things to throw at you.
Oh, crap. You got a list? Man, I'm not sure I can do it. Okay, all right. I will. You know I will, Bill. Go ahead.
The first one is, and it was good I'm following this guy talking about the strike with the CBA. if they do go on strike, what happens with the USL? With all these second teams that are affiliated with the MLS team?
Well, there are two different ways that these players are sent over to the USL team. Some of them have USL contracts. A couple of the kids in LA just signed USL contracts. A lot of these guys have USL contracts. I don't know how it works. If the guy's on an MLS contract, I'm guessing he'd be part of the strike, and he wouldn't be playing for that USL Pro or USL team. Obviously, the rest of those USL teams can still go on. It's a good question. I don't know. I imagine that I would guess that USL would prefer that the MLS operators of these clubs have enough players to go play games should an MLS strike happen.
Yeah, because I know now with Red Bulls 2, they're going to play at Red Bull Arena, and their home opener is on March 28th. And right now, I'm really looking forward to that game.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if this is the kind of thing that could backfire a little bit because, all right, I don't have the MLS team, but I have the USL team. I can watch them for a month or two, and whenever they get this worked out, they get it worked out.
Yeah, Bill, I'm going to let you go because I got some issues here with my phone line. I know you got a list of stuff. Let me get to Henrik real quick. Henrik, what's going on?
Well, I was wondering, the Danish national team might have a player strike on his hands because, so I was wondering what you think, like the U.S. federations should do with the friendly in case the players turn out striking.
Yeah, Henrik, you told me about this on Twitter, and I haven't really had a chance to look into it. It's a good question. The United States has had this issue in the past, and obviously various federations go through it on occasion where the national team players don't feel like they're getting enough for their effort, and they go on strike. If the United States is going up against a scab-laden Denmark team, I'm not sure it's worth it. But I imagine they would still play the game.
Yeah, because the issue is also it's not even just the pay; it's also that right now the federation negotiates with the players' union, and now the federation is trying to circumvent and just negotiate directly with the players and to break the unity. So a lot of the players are also pretty unhappy with that. So it could really risk because it could just be that a few players say no, and then it's still a pretty full team, but the players seems to be quite unified. So you'd end up having a team without all the big stars and without even the B or C line.
Yeah, if that's the case, again, I don't know. Is it worth it for U.S. Soccer to follow through? But then they have a contract with the federation. So how can you break that contract because of the player strike? I think it may be, and it may be just the easiest thing to do is to play the game, despite the fact you may not be getting their full team. And look, this game is what, a month away, a month and a half away? Do you think, or a month and a week away? Do you think that it's still going to be going on come the end of March?
Well, the federation set a deadline for March 2nd for the players to notify if they're willing to play regardless of to break lines. So it's really just a week and a half until the showdown.
Yeah. Well, that to be definitely bears watching again. I mean, it's more about Denmark and their players and their federation and the relationship than it is about the United States. But clearly, the U.S. has an interest if they have a scheduled friendly for March 25th. Thanks for the call, Henrik. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Daniel in Atlanta, what's going on, man?
Hey, good morning, Jason. How's it going?
Oh, yeah, it's great. It's fantastic. What's up?
Hey, not much, man. I just want to touch on CBA right quick.
All right.
Sorry, my throat hurts. Why is it so difficult for them to come to terms for free agency? Why can't they just have a free agency like the NBA or the NFL has?
Because MLS operates in a different manner, and the owners are very, very married to their concept of how to run the league. And if they open up the Pandora's box of free agency, my belief is they think that that's going to ultimately fundamentally change the way that their business operates. And they don't have books that indicate what the league is going to look like if everything's broken up in terms of single entity and free agency. They have books, they have future projections that are based on single entity and controlled costs and no competition between teams for players in the internal market. So I think we just have a fundamental difference of philosophy here that right now looks very much like the players are going to lose out, because while the players have the fan support for the most part, the owners they're not going to be overly hurt by a strike. I think ultimately, and you'll see this opinion from Steve Davis at World Soccer Talk right now. Go find that piece. While he may be on the side of the players in terms of right and wrong, he ultimately believes that the owners will break the players again because they have the power.
That's unfortunate I know the owners, they don't want to lose money, and for them to avoid free agency would be a wonder for them. So, like you say, they don't have to compete and bid for the best players. But I love MLS, but I want it to be resolved.
No, I agree. And look, I want free agency because I actually ultimately I think that's best for the players, and I think happy players make for a better league. And one day MLS owners are going to have to open up the purse strings and say, okay, fine. We may not be able to compete with the Premier League. We may not even be able to compete with Liga MX, but we're going to have to do something here. We're going to have to take a step forward. And to me, this seems like they've got a very antiquated way of doing business. And why not get the ball rolling in the right direction? But at the same time, when we talk about the nuts and bolts and the details of this, and again, this is from Steve Davis's piece at World Soccer Talk that you should be reading. He outlines how MLS can say, well, look, we're not restricting trade here. We're not keeping these players from having options because there are other leagues in other countries, even other leagues in this country that give them the opportunity to go sign where they want. If a player says, I want to be able to choose the city I live in to play, MLS can say, well, there's other teams in these cities. Go play go play for the New York Cosmos if you don't like. If you want to play in New York and the Red Bulls can't bid on you even if they want to. I don't know. I mean, again, there's sort of a right and wrong element to it. There's a legal element to it. There's a what's best for the future of MLS, which is a very subjective question. All of this stuff is at play right now, and it's I don't know. It sucks. It just sucks, Daniel.
It definitely sucks. I just want to ask one future question.
One future question. All right.
How far away is MLS from signing that big young star? You know what I'm saying? Like an Eden Hazard from the world or something like that. How far away do you think MLS is from doing that?
A long, long, long time from now. Because I don't think MLS is going to be signing 22, 23-year-old stars or 24-year-old stars or 25 years. I mean, Giovinco's what? He just turned 28 or 29. That's about the best you're going to do for now. What MLS the only way MLS gets those stars is by growing those stars, by finding a way to get those kids in here when they're 14 or 16 or 18 even. So maybe MLS, because, hey, the checks don't bounce, the quality of living is good, you can go to college at the same time. Maybe they get a kid to come up here from Argentina at 14 or something like that, and then somehow he becomes a star. MLS is going to have to spit these stars out, not bring them in.
Yeah, exactly. Don't know. Honestly, the youngest players are the future players, and as long as we can develop those players, then MLS is a growing league. Yeah, you're right. You got it. And
there you go.
Well, thanks, Jason, and I'll talk to you soon. And congrats on the World Soccer Talk.
Appreciate it, Daniel. Thanks a lot, man. Daniel in Atlanta joining in, and I feel bad because I went to Henrik about Denmark's player strike for their national team, and I completely wrecked Bill's list of topics. Bill in Rockland County, my immense apologies for not getting to your list of topics. Maybe you can call back to. Maybe we could do one thing on your list every single day. So tomorrow, Friday show, when who knows what kind of guests we'll have. We may have a couple of people on the line. I hope we get some good guests. We don't have anybody lined up at the moment, I don't think. Friday tends to be a bit of a free-for-all. Maybe Bill can get in. Oh, look at this. Washington's on the air. What's up, Washington?
Hey, what's up, Jason? Long time.
Hey. Yeah, it's been a while. What's going on?
I lost you for a minute, but I'm glad you're back on.
What's going on?
Listen, I just wanted to address something you just said that kind of rubbed me the wrong way about the MLS having to bring in kids. You said something, you used an example about bringing a 14-year-old in from Argentina and developing them that way, right? Why not bring a 14-year-old from Nebraska?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
From New York, a 14-year-old from California.
Absolutely, Washington. You're 100% right. And when I said it, what I meant was the way that Daniel posed that question, he seemed to indicate where he was talking about foreign stars. He was talking about a foreign kid who may be eligible for somebody else's national team. That's the only reason I said Argentina. Yeah, I want MLS.
My point to that is, I think a lot of people view success as when we have European and international stars coming to MLS. I don't see that as MLS being successful, because the NBA doesn't get doesn't try to recruit European stars. We have our own. Same thing with the NFL and Major League Baseball. I think success is when MLS breeds American players, and we're the top league in the world, and we're where people want to come play.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, there's a long and again, this is the internal struggle of what MLS wants to be, how it wants to get there. You have a league that wants to sign Steven Gerrard, that wants to sign Frank Lampard, that wants to sign David Villa and Kaká, and that's fantastic. That's great. Those guys are names that bring attention to the league. But it's also a league that wants to start academies and turn kids into quality players, hopefully superstars. MLS, to me, MLS is successful when we're not talking about, 24-year-old, 23-year-old Breck Shea going to Stoke for $3 million. We're talking about an 18-year-old who's being eyed by Chelsea. And even if the money is not huge, we're talking about younger and younger players who are, and again, I'm a little uncomfortable sometimes with the element of young players and how much they're exploited. But if you're talking about MLS and its growth, what you want MLS to do is to create academy systems. And it's not going to be every club, because not every club in every league is successful. But enough that you have sort of this constant discussion about whether or not a player is going to go and join a Chelsea or a Liverpool or a Manchester United or a La Liga team or whatever. Or if he's going to stay here and sign and play for, the Chicago Fire because he's from Gary or something. I mean, whatever it is, that's what you want.
Exactly. I'm with you. Hey man, it's good to see you back on, though.
Appreciate it. Washington, good call. Long time, but since we heard from Washington on Soccer Morning. All right, that's going to do it. Thank you very much to David Cartlidge. Excellent stuff on Spain. And James Montague. I mean, I don't know. I feel like when James Montague comes on the show, I feel like every single word I utter, every breath I use to speak is wasted time for James to talk. And I enjoy having James on the show. It's great to have him back. Make sure you're following both of those guys. David, J-A-C-A, is David Cartlidge. James P-I-O-T-R is James Montague. All right, that's it. Go get a mug. That's backheel.com/store. Free shipping extended through today. Worldwide free shipping. Use the code MUG, all caps, because I've seen some problems with this. I'm guessing all caps is important. MUG. Get free shipping on your Soccer Morning mug, and trust me, that's a good discount because shipping can cost a bit. I got my Soccer Morning mug somewhere. I lost it. No, it's here. I got it. Anywhere on the earth. That's right. Go get a T-shirt at 3nilfc.com. where you get a Soccer Morning T-shirt. The Backheel T-shirts are like this one, which I got here. This is my Chuck Blazer CONCACAF Ball-In T-shirt. Go get one of those as well. All right, that's going to do it. Tomorrow's Friday. We'll be back here. World Soccer Talk. It's going to be a good time. Looking forward to it. Trevor will come up with something. All right, guys. We'll talk to you then. Bye.
Motel alone, their corporate